Welcome everyone to another episode of Follow the Light Music Review. My name is John De Laurentiis, and this is episode 17 in Revisiting the Classics. And today we're going to be looking at a fantastic album that was groundbreaking in many ways. But before we get into that, I would like to encourage you to please support my channel by subscribing, liking the video, adding your comments to the video, and then also don't forget to ring the bell so that you can be updated of new content that's added to the channel. All right, so what we're going to be looking at today in this spotlight is Daniel Amos, Alarma. Let me move back a little bit so you can see it. All right, and this is my original vinyl copy. And as you can see, I got it as a cutout. Remember those? I always used to hate this, that they would take a piece of the album out, and oftentimes, depending on where they did the cutout, it could ruin the inner sleeve and things of that nature too. But it was their way of saying that you didn't buy it for full price if you tried to return it, I guess. It carried over onto CDs too, which annoyed me there too as well. Usually if I get a CD that's like that, I will replace the jewel case to try to minimize the cutout on there. But anyway, getting off on a budding trail here. So this is the album we're going to be looking at, Daniel Amos Alarma album. And we're going to talk more about this, and we're going to look at also one of the deluxe reissues on CD of this very fantastic album. So let's talk a little bit about Daniel Amos. So Daniel Amos definitely holds one of the spots in the history of Christian music as being one of the absolute best and influential bands to ever appear on the scene, in my opinion. Led by songwriting genius Terry Taylor, who was in high school bands in the 1960s, such as the Scarlet Staircase, who had the distinction of gaining the audience of Van Morrison at the Battle of the Bands, and the Eccentrics, another band who would be the first band to play at Apogee West, which was a youth social club in Los Gatos, California. So in the mid-1966, middle of the 60s, 1966, Terry was a part of a band called the Cardboard Scheme, and they played all over the Santa Clara area. They did Beatles, Buffalo Springfield, and other UK band covers, as well as originals by Terry and guitarist Timothy Warner. So even at that early stage, Terry was dabbling in the songwriting craft. This same Timothy Warner would find Christ, and around 1969, 1970, he would witness to Terry, who accepted Christ, because as Terry recounts, Timothy explained that it was a personal relationship, that I could know God. Eventually I gave in and I asked the Lord into my life. So then in 1971, Terry and Timothy formed a group called Good Shepherd, and they wrote and played Christian music in various places. So Terry wrote his first decidedly Christian song called Walking with My Lord around that time. So then in 1972, Terry joined another band called Judge Rainbow and the Prophetic Trumpets, which featured his future wife, Debbie Terrell. And several demos were recorded at this time, including William, which is a song that would later appear on the very first Daniel Amos album in an altered version. It will be great to hear those demos. Then, in late 1972, he was in a band called Jubal's Last Band. It was formed of Terry Taylor, Steve Baxter, and Kenny Paxton. And with Chuck Starnes added, the band recorded a demo cassette in 1974. And then in the summer of 1974, Jubal's Last Band moved to Southern California to become part of the Maranatha music scene there. And in 1975, Jubal's Last Band morphed into what we now know as Daniel Amos. So how the name came about, Terry explains this. He says, Daniel Band was a name that was chosen out of the Bible, the Old Testament. It's the prophets, Daniel and Amos. We were a country band at the time. We thought it would be a little different to put a couple of names together that sounded like an old country gentleman sitting out on the fence, strumming his guitar. Of course, it has caused some problems over the years, people asking who's Daniel and who's Amos. There is no Daniel Amos in the band, so some people thought it was the name of somebody. Their name was Daniel Amos, or it was Daniel, last name of one member, or Amos, the last name of another member, instead of what it actually stood for, which was two Old Testament prophets. So then Daniel Amos, if you know their history, they would begin as a country rock band that was akin to the mainstream band, the Eagles. And their debut self-titled album, which you might see up on my shelf there, was released in 1976 on Maranatha Records. And it's a far cry away from the alternative rock that they would later go on to record and be so influential in that field. But it's still an enjoyable country rock album, great harmonies and musicianship. And again, there's that Eagles type flavor in there as well. So it's kind of like country rock. And so it's an enjoyable listen if you have not heard it. Then in 1977, they released their second album, Shotgun Angel, also on Maranatha Records. And the band split the album between one side in country, music in the vein of their first album. But then on the, and there's some of the tracks that are really standout tracks on that first side of Shotgun Angel are Father's Arms and the opener of the album, Days and Nights, which adds a little bit more rockier elements. But this album was unique in that on the second half of the album, they created a rock opera, which begins with finale Bereshith Overture and ends with Posse in the Sky, which sounds like it could be an outtake from the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album, the way it's put together. It was like some orchestration and strings and stuff put on that second side. And it really shows the brilliance of Terry Taylor's songwriting that would continue to be developed in a different direction on subsequent albums. And this second half of the album, if you've ever seen the album they put out called The Revelation, that's a later reworked and re-released version of that second side of Shotgun Angel, put out under the title of The Revelation. That came out on Frontline Records in 1986. So then the band's third album, Horrendous Disc, was recorded in 1978, and it was initially supposed to be released on Maranatha Records, but it was dropped by the label because Maranatha Records had decided that they no longer wanted to start focusing on rock albums. They wanted to go in a different direction. So the album kind of just was recorded but not released. And it wouldn't find its release until 1981. And it came out on Larry Norman's Solid Rock label. And of course, that album signaled the turning away from the band's country rock roots toward a more pop rock direction. It opens up with the rocking I Love You, number 19. The band have their sound firmly rooted in a more like Beatles, Beach Boys melodic soundscape on that album. And the album features many songs that remain classics from their catalog, like Hound of Heaven is on that album. The sprawling title track is on that album. And this particular album placed at number 63 in CCM Magazine's The 100 Greatest Albums in Christian Music listing. So, and remember, there was a clamoring to get that out on CD for the longest time. There were things holding it up. It was owned, obviously, by Solid Rock, Larry Norman's thing. But it did eventually come out, and in fact, there's a nice box set of that was eventually released a few years back. I believe I have it in my collection here. However, it was on the the fourth album, Alarma, that the band would do an about face, kind of turning away from that kind of pop rock sound. And they moved more into an alternative rock new wave sound that was similar in scope to bands like the Talking Heads, Elvis Costello, even some B-52s influences I hear on there. And it was released in 1981 on Newpax Records. Okay, and that's this is the version I have here, the Newpax. This is the original vinyl on Newpax Records. And it's an absolute masterpiece of artistic songwriting that shows a literary approach to songwriting and expressing one's Christian faith. So Terry Taylor lyrical genius when it comes to writing lyrics and music. And here he's moving Christian music away from just being kind of like a gospel track into exploring issues of faith and putting them forth in a literary way, and also in a very convincing or convicting way. When we talk about the songs, you'll know what I'm talking about with that. And so this album here, it's cutting edge because at the time it was running concurrent with that type of music that was going on in the mainstream music. So a lot of times people say, well, Christian music was five years behind what was currently going on in the mainstream market. But this was current with what was going on in the mainstream market. So they were ahead of their time in doing that. They weren't waiting 5 years for it to come about. They were doing it at the same time. So the album ultimately became volume 1 in the Alarma Chronicles, which would go on to release 3 more albums after that. And it absolutely stands as a must-have album for Christian music collectors. And this album placed at number 62, just ahead of Horrendous Disc in CCM Magazine's 100 Greatest Albums in Christian Music listing. So we're going to explore this album, and we'll look at the fantastic song cycle that it provides. But before we look at the album version, I just want to go over who are the musicians on the album, on this fourth Daniel Amos album. And it's Terry Taylor, of course, the primary songwriter, lead and background vocalist, and rhythm guitarist Jerry Chamberlain on lead guitars, backing vocals, and percussion. On My Room, he plays. Martin Diekmeyer, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if I am not. Bass guitar, keyboards, and percussion on My Room, and lead vocals on one of the songs called Props. And Ed McTaggart, drums, percussion, and backing vocals. And there are a couple guest musicians here that we'll talk about as we get into that. But let's take a look at this album here. So this is, released as, like I said, the Alarma Chronicles Volume 1. And of course, the cover itself was a little bit controversial because their eyes being blurred out. Like, what's that about? And if you know the lyrical content of this album, it really fits. This is a perfect cover for it because the album deals with a lot of kind of the blindness that is going on in the Christian world toward things that are going on in how they are operating. And we'll talk about that when we get into the songs. And then, of course, you flip it over and the eyes are in there on the back. And this has, one of the great things about vinyl records, and I always loved as a kid, the gatefold. And so you have that, and you have all these images here, and all of these images here refer to lyrical content that's on the album here. And then you have some of the credits there. And when you pull it out, what was neat about this is it came with a little fold-out booklet here. So album size here. And you can see there's that cut out there, but fortunately it didn't cut into any of the text here. But you open it up, and you have this whole entire story that's here. So it's not only an album that has great songs with great lyrics, but you get an entire Alarma Chronicles Volume 1, and they go through this whole thing with scriptures and details and things of that nature. And then you have here on the back all the lyrics to all the songs here. And the vinyl inside, one of these ones I got to switch over to a poly sleeve, but there is it's just a very, just the regular black vinyl. And you have side 1 there on the Newpax label, and then side 2 there. And just a great album. And of course, like I said, I've had this original issue, which obviously I got in a Christian bookstore, most likely, or I got it on one of the many online places that you would order music. Rad Rockers was one of them I used to order from all the time. There was Long's Christian Music, that was another one. There was a lot of places to order, so it's possible I got it through mail order. It may have been in my Christian bookstore, but again, Daniel Amos may not be one of the bands they necessarily had a lot of stock of. But that, again, like I said, is my original vinyl copy of it. And at the end, after I'm done going through the songs, I'm going to show you one of the collector's editions. There was several different, well, maybe not several, but there were a few reissues of it on CD, and I have what I believe is the definitive reissue of it on CD. So I'm going to show you that after I go over this incredible song cycle here. So let's look at these songs here. So this album, and this album is made up of primarily shorter tracks. Okay, there's not any long, sprawling songs on here. The tracks run 2 to 3, 4 minutes long, and you know, there's a lot. You have to listen to it. It's like thematic in a sense with what is going on in the lyrical content here. So it opens up with Central Theme, which is a great opening track. Opens with a strong bass hook, melodic guitar playing. It lays out at the very outset of the album the band's statement about their faith in very clear terms. So there's no question as to who the album or who their faith is as a band. It's set out right in the lyrics. They sing, "Who is on the throne you find? The King of Kings. He's the one I have in mind. The central theme, Lord of Lords." All right, it's a very quirky and bouncy melody, both infectious and grooving. Great way to open the album. And then it goes into the title track, Alarma, and that is a raucous rocker driven by some electrifying guitar riffing by Jerry Chamberlain here. It opens up kind of like with this amusement park ominous music before it moves into its rhythmic and driving beat. And it features some of those Beatle-esque harmonies, and also features some impeccable lead guitar solos on here as well by Jerry. Alex McDougall adds marimba to the song, and the song raises the alarm on somebody's turning away. That's one of the things that's sung frequently in the song. And it's basically a song that's aimed at complacent Christians who are wrapped up in either a type of cellophane sugarcane, or else preachers who are inviting people into services that are marked by guilt, as they sure know how to get your money. So these kinds of scathing commentaries prove that Daniel Amos is heading into lyrical territory that is aimed at shaking up a lukewarm Christianity. And they do it in a very poetic way, the way Terry writes it. And, you have to look at these lyrics, read them, and they're very poetic in their way they're bringing forth these things here. But when you get at what the messages of a lot of these songs on here, it's kind of a scathing commentary on those who claim to be Christians, but oftentimes are not living Christ-like, or are getting pulled into maybe, worldly type ways of trying to reach people, or pushing the guilt or the fire and brimstone, or something that's going to get the people in, and then when they get them in, here's your opportunity to give. So it's kind of like that. So Alarma, one of my favorite tracks on the album, just a great classic track here. Then it goes on to Big Time, Big Deal. Now this opens up with a kind of sung vocal style. It has a pulsating beat that's anchored by what I think is almost like a B-52's guitar riff on here, as the band here addresses Christian superstars who aim for big-time recognition as they yearn for the long line to tell them what I've done, to tell the audience what I've done. And in the end, I get all this and heaven when I'm done. So it's kind of like a warning call to musicians who are trying to build themselves up, and their aim is not necessarily to glorify God and reach people for Christ, but to build up themselves and get a big name and get the big lines and get the big fame and the spotlight hitting on them. So another commentary and conviction on that topic. This is followed up by Props. This is a very short 2-minute song that may have you thinking that they've returned to the country sound of their first two albums, as it kind of sounds, has this kind of tap dancing rhythm that's complete with whistling and ethereal harmonies. And the song addresses the things we often use as props to portray that everything is hunky-dory and to mask any realities of struggle that may cause people to judge your walk of faith. So this cleverly worded facade is poetically worded, as Taylor writes, and I love this line here. All the little men, they're gonna come and put away the sun and the big blue sky. which happens after the show is now over and the reality of its actors are now not a part of the play anymore. So it's kind of like putting on a show, a facade for people to make them think that, I got it all together and I'm perfect. And, then, that perfect thing is all wrapped up and put away as they leave and go back to reality. So again, very creative. And this is on a song that's only 2 minutes long here. Miss My Room here is the next one, and that's another rhythmic rocker that features another anchoring bass line there with an almost reggae sounding guitar riff on this one. And it features Alex McDougall on the congos on this one. You can hear them very prominently in the mix. The song addresses here the isolationism of Christians who are clustered away together, sharing the message of faith, but kind of keeping it secret to this wicked, wicked world, as it says in the lyrics here. So one is brought to mind from these lyrics here, that Jesus instructed us to let your light so shine before men that they see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven, Matthew 5:16. And so it's encouraging us to live out our faith before a watching world, not hide our light away from the unsaved or from those who would need it. So again, another very strong message of conviction here on this album. And then again, that continues on with the next song, Faces to the Windows. So this opens up with a nice fast-paced guitar riff coupled with a new wavy throbbing syncopation to it, a pulsating bass riff, and the song continues in its observations of Christians who go about their every day without paying attention to the faces in the windows who suffer in the world with hunger. So it's very creatively worded, and it appeals to the importance of our global responsibility to take care of the least of these here. So another very strong message here. Not to just keep yourself isolated away to those faces in the windows who are crying out for help, again, the lyrical content on here really makes you, if you really listen to it, really makes you convicted in your walk here. Cloak and Dagger is the next song. This is co-written by Taylor and Jerry Chamberlain. The song uses this accented guitar riff that changes into another kind of toe-tapping, picking romp. And as the song delves into the topic of hypocrisy this time, and here's some of the lyrics here. If somebody tells you that their love is true, don't believe it if they hold a gun to you. And this kind of underscores the importance to reach people where they are without judgment, but the genuine love of Christ. The song midway features a nice musical interlude, and then it features another melodic guitar solo by Jerry. And again, of course, another very important message here. Our responsibility, like in the last song, is to be Christ-like. If you go around and you're pointing the finger and you're judging people in the world, you're judging people who are unsaved, who are sinning or living a certain lifestyle, and what benefit is that if you're sitting there pointing fingers at them? Is that showing them the love of Christ? Is that going to draw them to Christ, or is that going to make them think that, boy, this Christianity is nothing but judging me and pointing the finger at me? As I think that's what kind of the message they're getting here. We need to reach people with the love of Christ, not reach people with a fire and brimstone pointing the finger at them. Not that these doctrinal things and these doctrinal truths are not there and important, but they're going to learn about those things as they come to Christ. They're going to learn about that things as they delve into the Word and get into it. Remember, the gospel is called the good news. It's not called the bad news. It's called good news. But sometimes it's delivered by Christians in a way that it sounds like bad news to them, and they're not interested. We drive them away because of judgmental attitudes. Again, I really appreciate the lyrical content on here. This is followed up by Colored By, and this is closing out side one on the original album. And this features another kind of Talking Heads type frenetic beat, as it analyzes different churches who judge others based on cultural biases. So, Christians in one church judging Christians in another church by the way they're doing things, or judging Christians in other countries. So one of, I think, the more powerful lyrics in here is this one. He says, down in Africa, they beat the drum. They like the big beat. White man through the PA says, don't beat that drum. They tell him, go back. Where does it say that? All right, so again, and that, of course, has been an argument for, drums are of the devil, as if musical instruments somehow could be aligned with the devil. That's why I think why Larry Norman went and wrote the song "Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music." There is nothing inherently evil about drums, which was or drums or different cultures. They celebrate Christ using the instruments of their culture. So in Africa, the drums are very prominent here, and this is a very important pointing to that. And I think the focus here in the song and encouraging us in our life is to focus on the real thing, our faith in Christ, and how it is universal, not limited by cultural differences. There's nothing wrong with culture. Culture was created by God. Different people have different cultures, and they have different traditions, and they have different musical and folklore and all that stuff. And as someone who believes in Christ and believes that people are created in his image, we should be highly interested in culture and cultural differences and celebrate it. Celebrate diversity. It's a wonderful thing. Diversity, it's what God created, diversity. Again, another strong track here. Now, side 2 of the album opens up with C and D reprise, and that's a 45-second reprise of Cloak and Dagger. It's an instrumental, kind of serves as an intro to the second side. And just like Alarma opens up with this rocking as the second song on the first side, Through the Speakers opens up as a rocking song on this second side. And it's more guitar-driven, new wave, and it also features a more guitar-driven riff and ventures into kind of like the type of musical song that Elvis Costello was writing at the time. I remember one particular Elvis Costello album called Armed Forces, as a point of reference, that kind of music there. That was around the 80s too as well. And the song explores musical ministry as Terry sings, "I better tell you, Jesus says he loves you through the speakers, through the speakers." So it kind of underscores the power of music to influence and minister to others and the other voices, amid all the other voices that are on the radio here. There's a definite power of music, and music is such a powerful force. And when you wed it with lyrics that make you think and lyrics that make you, are wed to Christian themes and stuff like that, it's all the more powerful and brings kind of a stronger push in that message as well. Then the next song is called Hit Them, and this is a mid-pace rocker with lots of melody, with another strong beat and rhythm section, along with some strumming guitar chords. The song is kind of like a sing-along type of song that highlights the importance of reaching people with love rather than judgment. The song has that strong 80s new wave sound with some great harmonies on it. Again, another great track. Baby Game. This is another new wavy kind of B-52's Devo type rhythmic rocker that addresses the church's lack of providing enough meat for its congregates to enter into the wide world prepared to handle it. So one of the beautifully written verses here that I love in this song is this: "Little birds are helpless, way up in the tree. They cry for mother almost constantly. But little birds must one day take their wing. I told her this, she threw her rattle at me." All right, so more great lyrics by Terry. Focusing on the fact that we're not to, as new Christians, we take in the milk of the word, but we're to grow beyond the milk of the word and get into the meat of the word, and not be playing the baby game, 10 years after we became a Christian. So, and again, getting ourselves under a good pastor and who teaches the word and the application of the word is very important, so that you can grow in your faith and move forward. Then after this is Shedding the Mortal Coil. This is another short tune at 1 minute and 20 seconds, has this perky rhythm. The song has a repeating riff as it repeats the title of the song, pointing toward our ultimate redemption. Then the last 3 songs of this album, every song that's come before this is great, but then these last 3 songs I think are also very strong, and some of the best songs on the album. This is an album that doesn't lose steam at all. There's no filler on this album at all. Every single track, even these short interludes, all go and blend together beautifully on this album. So it's followed up by Endless Summer. And this is a fast-paced rocker that uses kind of a Beach Boys lyrical nod, co-written by Taylor and Chamberlain here. The song has some great solos in it, guitar interludes that make it infectious. As the lyrics proclaim, we're still looking for an endless summer. It's no surprise we'll be looking endlessly. And it kind of has that surf music vibe to it. Really, really strong song. Another really powerful song, Walls of Doubt. This is, I think, one of Taylor's best songs. Song has a grooving rhythm that is more akin to kind of surf music mixed with new wave. That sounds kind of British new wave-ish, British new wavy. Features swirling melodies, inventive guitar, solo fills, a solid bass riffing in it. And the song speaks of the inner works of the Spirit, calling people to the Lord. And again, some great lyrical references here as Taylor sings, "It's just like the 60s to me, you paint it all black." And of course, if you're familiar with the 60s and the Rolling Stones, Paint It Black was one of their very popular and famous songs here. So they kind of reference that lyrically here. Then the album ends with Ghost of the Heart. This is another strong new wavy groove-laden tune. That also was another album highlight. Taylor speaks about the struggle of being a musician in a world where musicians are often put up on pedestals, yet those doing it from a faith perspective need the conviction of the ghost, okay? Referring, of course, to the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost, in their hearts to keep them centered. And he sings here, "I need the light on, the monster of vanity gets, frightened by the ghost of the heart." All right, so, having that, vanity that may come from all this great music you're putting out and the acclaim you get for it, the ghost of the heart needs to frighten you to keep you humble and realize that, ultimately all of our talents and all our gifts come from the Lord, right? So the glory needs to go back to him, That's where it comes from. So again, all in all, just a masterful album that continued with more strong albums in the Alarma Chronicles series. This is a band that kept putting out consistently good albums. Pretty much, I have their whole discography, and one day I'll go over maybe their entire discography and talk about, do a ranking video of my favorites in the catalog. But this is a band that has consistently great albums, and this Alarma series is just fantastic. So I know we're running long here, but I do want to show you the CD version here. This is what I think is one of the best of the CD released ones. This was a deluxe 2-disc collector's edition that was put out by Stunt Records in conjunction with Born Twice Records, which is Matt Hunt label. And this is a really, really great version. It opens up like this with the two. It has an entire bonus disc of tracks, unreleased tracks, live tracks, demos, there's an alternate reading at the very end. Just a fantastic. And I have to say, in this case, you might say the album with that large size fold out is better than a CD booklet, which is smaller. But in this case, the booklet is better than the vinyl pull out sleeve, because everything is so much easier to read in here. You have the lyrics very easy. On the vinyl version, that pull out, they're kind of small and put together. Here, they're all laid out beautifully in the booklet. And then the story thing that was on the other side of that fold-out insert is a great collage in here too. You can see that here, and you can read it much easier here. All of that's in there. And so this is just like the for me the definitive version of this album. And they followed up the other ones with other deluxe ones too. Nice picture of the band there. So I don't want to take too much more time because we're running close to the 35-minute version, but if a 35-minute mark. But if you get a chance to get this version, and I think, believe it or not, I think I saw this on Boone's Over. I could be mistaken, but check. But I almost remember looking on Boone's Overstock, and they had this version for $5. And if that's true, if I'm remembering correctly, get online and get it immediately if you don't have that, because this is an absolutely essential classic album that you need to have if you're a Christian rock music fan. So again, I'm going to close it out here because we're getting really long here. So I appreciate you staying with me this long. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your support for my channel. Again, I would love to hear your comments about this great band, and I would just like to hear also about what do you think about Daniel Amos in general. Is Terry Taylor still involved in music and just an incredible songwriter all through the years, and in all the, Daniel Amos and all the projects that he's been involved with as well. So hope you enjoyed that. And again, I encourage you, as always, to follow the light that shines out of the darkness. God bless everyone.